about how to talk to family members of a soldier who's paid the ultimate sacrifice.
And he said to me, "What do I say?" I said to him, "Sir, there's nothing you can do to lighten the burden on these families. But let me tell you what I tell them. And let me tell you what my best friend, Joe Dunford, told me, because he was my casualty officer. He said, Kel, he was doing exactly what he wanted to do when he was killed. He knew what he was getting into by joining that 1%.
Now, Kelly offered up this explanation at a time when President Trump is under scrutiny for the tone and for the words he chose when he spoke to the widow of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson. That's one of the soldiers who was killed in that military operation that went awry in Niger. This is not the narrative the White House wants, but how difficult it is to get away from all sides, whether it's Kelly, whether it's this congresswoman, whether it's President Trump, politicizing the death of a U.S. soldier. Back to you.
Sarah Murray outside of the White House. Now, we want to bring in CNN political analyst Julian Zelizer. He's a historian and Princeton University professor. Good morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning. Morning.
First question for you. I mean, second time Kelly appears in the White House briefing. Is he becoming Trump's explainer-in-chief, essentially?
Yeah, I think he's taking on a new role. He's one of the figures now who is a public spokesperson for the administration. It's no longer just John Kelly behind the scenes trying to quote-unquote control the president. He's actually carrying forward with some of the president's message, and that's exactly what he did yesterday.
Look, General John Kelly had to take a call no American ever should have to, the most heartbreaking phone call ever, and we should give deference to the general for losing a son in Afghanistan in 2010, but he got a lot wrong yesterday. One, he mischaracterized the relationship of this congresswoman and the family, close family friends. There was no secret listening in on this phone call. The widow put it on speakerphone. She wanted everyone to hear it. But is the chief of staff holding the media, holding a Democratic congressman to a higher standard than he is his boss, the President of the United States, when it comes to politicizing these condolence calls?
Well, in fact, the administration can be seen, including Chief of Staff Kelly, as politicizing this call, meaning this started with the comments of the president, which were shocking to everyone listening, and all of a sudden this has blown up into a rather big issue, and here you have the Chief of Staff going after a congresswoman who is in fact a family friend of the deceased.
Yeah, it would have been nice just to hear the chief of staff hold his boss accountable. This started with Sarah Murray asking the question, why haven't we heard anything from you so far about the soldiers that were killed in Niger? A very simple answer.
Right.
We're still searching for information on this with our military leaders in the Pentagon. We mourn those American heroes and their families. Yeah. But he didn't do that. He didn't want this to end.
Yeah, and
personal grievances.
Right, and it still remains unclear why he didn't come out sooner to me. That, and the context is he was tweeting a lot about the NFL. But I do want to move on to something else that was very extraordinary yesterday. We heard from former President Bush, as George W. Bush, as well as former President Obama. But what was really stunning was hearing from George W. Bush. Hearing from a Republican, essentially bashing a Republican sitting president. What does that say?
Though not by name.
Though not by name.
Let's listen to it first.
Yeah, we have the sound.
Reaction.
We've seen our discourse degraded by casual cruelty. At times, it could seem like the forces pulling us apart are stronger than the forces binding us together. We've seen nationalism distorted into nativism.
Instead of looking for ways to work together and get things done in a practical way, we've got folks who are deliberately trying to make folks angry, to demonize people who have different ideas, to get the base all riled up.
Bush went 8 years without criticizing Obama, but he's clearly criticizing Trump. What does it say about the state of the Republican Party?
I think there are many people in the Republican Party who have two fears. One, in the short term, what happens to a Republican Party under President Trump? What are the kinds of political losses they will suffer, and one is larger. I think you're hearing genuine concerns from former President Bush. What is the cost of this administration to America's role in the world, and here within the United States to a party that plays to an extremist base, rather than what Bush originally wanted to do back in 2000, which was to broaden the coalition of the GOP and create a permanent majority. I think he sees President Trump going in the exact opposite direction, shrinking what it means to be a Republican.
All right, put your historian cap on for 1 second on a yes and no question. Have we ever seen a Democrat and Republican president speak with one voice criticizing a current president?
Not like this. We've seen former presidents back in the political fray, but not like what we saw yesterday.
Tell you what else we have not seen. We have not seen Paul Ryan provide levity. Cracking jokes last night at the Al Smith dinner, and did a fantastic job, even if someone may have taken offense. Listen.
I know last year that Donald Trump offended some people. I know his comments, according to critics, went too far. Some said it was unbecoming of a public figure, and they said that his comments were offensive. Well, thank God he's learned his lesson. Every morning, I wake up in my office and I scroll Twitter to see which tweets that I'll have to pretend that I did not see later on.
Now, it's not clear if he'll be subject to a tweet storm later this morning, but how do those types of moments humanize politicians?
Look, they show a little bit that they understand what everyone else is watching, and they understand some of the problems that exist. And when you hear someone make a joke, it's easier to relate to them. But people will ask, if he thinks these things, if he can joke about these things, why isn't Speaker Ryan, why isn't the Republican Party actually doing something about the issues they are joking about? And that's a natural question for many people to ask.
And the answer is they want tax reform.
They want tax reform and they want a majority.
Yes. All right, Julian Zellzer, great to have you. Have a good weekend, my friend.
You too.
All right, America's